do you make of all these cars dipping in? I mean, I say all these cars, and I think we have to be pretty specific about it. 3 of the new cars that arrived on the scene at the Midwest Drag Racing Series dipping into 350. Stan Shelton with the aforementioned Stan Shelton with his screw blown Pro Mod Camaro out of the Pro Line camp.
Mustang.
Also, Mustang. Daniel Ferris as well with the Pro Charged car out of the Pro Line camp. The aforementioned Dustin Nesloney that won the event. He dipped into the 350s with a Pro Charger car out of the Pro Line camp. You know, Mike, you've fought this battle alongside your dad, the godfather of Pro Mod, Charles Carpenter. Do you relate to the battle that some of these guys are preparing to face, the guys who have been part of that Midwest series for the last few years, when you get some of these? And everybody gets super sensitive about this, and I'm not trying to call anybody out or say anybody's better than anyone else. But I do think there's some truth to the fact that, what did Nate say the other day, our editor-in-chief, as the great American poet Meek Mill once said, there's levels to this shit, right? I mean, and I think that exists in drag racing, and you've got some really high-level teams that have infiltrated the Midwest Drag Racing Series, and I'm anxious to see how everybody reacts to it.
I think that's the problem that these regional series face. I think that they come about in large part to give guys that don't run the national series, that don't run NHRA Pro Mod, maybe even don't run PDRA, give them a place to race. And then when, as you said, infiltrated by these high level cars, it sort of resets the deck. However, sort of running counter to that, I think the weather was a big factor in what we saw this weekend, and the fact that it was the first race. I think that we're early in the season. PDRA has not started up yet. We've had one NHRA Pro Mod race. I think these guys are looking for a place to race. I'll be curious to see how many of these cars follow the series all year for points. And
me too.
And what happens when we start to see hot summer conditions, when we start to see races on top of other events, and where people choose to go.
Let's touch on that, because
I'm trying not to overreact to it too much, but
we are going to see a rule change,
concerning.
though. Don't you agree? Like, I mean, I heard about it before the season started, that the Midwest Drag Racing Series kind of powers that be were making it known that, hey, we recognize that our rules compared to many of the other, primarily like the Snowbird Outlaw Nationals rule set, kind of what is quickly becoming the go-to Outlaw Pro Mod rule set, that they were a little light on their Pro Charger combination. Mm-hmm. I dove into this a little bit, and one of the discussions that I had was basically that the Midwest Drag Racing Series didn't want to write rules prematurely. They didn't want to slow down or address a problem that they didn't have yet, right? Because they didn't have anybody in their series that was necessarily running away with it with the Pro Charger combination.
And they would be addressing it before they even had their first race.
Exactly.
So
they had to let it happen almost, right? However, I have heard a lot of chatter in the last 72 hours or so, the last couple of days, that a rule change is coming. And I'm anxious to see how they handle this, because I think you make a really good point. You can throw all this out the window come June in St. Louis.
Right.
Or June at Great Bend, when you've got some
any
elevation.
Other time. We saw, I think I didn't have boots on the ground or know exactly what the weather conditions were there, but I think that they won't see that again this year until either the very last race of the season or the start of next season. So it's hard to react to it right away, but it's certainly concerning as far as the parity on all these combinations. And I think that series, especially, we've seen some real hitters with turbo combinations over there. And I think that would be the main concern for me. I think we saw some nitrous cars hang in there.
Hanging in with a 365. I mean, that was the nitrous record, I believe, for the Midwest Series. He stepped up. I will say that I'm excited to see some of these guys elevate their game, because you will see a certain amount of that. I'll never forget when Billy Glidden showed up on the scene in what was then a very popular category, ADRL Extreme 10.5. It was the ADRL's kind of outlaw, no-holds-barred version of 10.5W racing. And Billy Glidden had all this success in NMRA, NMCA. He was a legend, right? Is the son of Bob Glidden, raced in pro stock, has all this experience and all this knowledge, a really a notorious rule book racer, right? A guy that always had a car that really fit a certain segment of the rules, super lightweight, small block Ford, nitrous, every advantage that he could find inside the rules.
Pro stock car, right? An ex Mark Powick GTO.
Yeah. Then it became a Mustang, I believe. At one point, they changed bodies on it.
Remember, he rolled it in Topeka, I think, something like that, and then he re-skinned it as a Mustang. I
I
think that's
believe
how that
that's
went.
right. I think
Yeah.
that's exactly right. And an axle broke or something at Topeka,
Yeah.
and he ended up putting a Ford Mustang body on it. So
Which
God bless
manufacturer?
him. Yeah, somebody had to put a Ford Mustang body on something. Anyways, but I remember when Billy Glidden showed up in ADRL Extreme 10.5, and it immediately, everybody was running 430s, let's say. I mean, I believe most of the field, Steve Kirk Jr., Mike Hill, David Janes, a lot of the guys, Spiro Pappas, a lot of the people that were front runners. What's Kenny? I'm drawing blank on his name. You would know it. 63
Kenny
Corvette.
Neese.
That Kenny Neese. There was a
Yep.
slew of guys that were all in that 430, 440 range consistently.
This was pre Dan Millen, right? This was pre
Yes. Pre Alanabi Dan Millen, right?
Maybe I gave away the end of the story.
Well,
here.
no, but Billy Glidden came in and his stuff's going like 420s and immediately. And everybody, it was cool to see the way the class reacted, because a lot of people were saying the same things that we're saying today, that, oh, here he comes. He's going to ruin it. He's going to win the championship and run away with it. And he did kick some ass and take some names, no doubt about it. But everybody's program ultimately benefited, I think, from his presence. And I do think it's going to be, that's part of it, right? That's the curse of heads up drag racing, is it's so hard to write rules that are going to take
parity
these things.
is an illusion. In heads up drag
illusion,
racing,
man.
with multiple combinations, parity is an illusion. And if you achieve it, even for a short period, yeah, just know that it's only going to last that short period.
Right.
It's
and
always
I think
changing.
You maintaining the illusion is really what you have to focus on, because are you really going to nail it? I don't think so, because there's so many factors that come into play, how hard you're willing to run your stuff. That was the conversation that I've had with a lot of racers the last few days. I wanted to know, like, whenever I see one of those 358, 357 runs, are you running the rods out of this thing? Is there more left in it? And I talked to a multitude of racers. They're running these things on the ragged edge. And if you look at like the short times, for instance, when Daniel Ferris went 356, that thing went 909 down low, 909, 238 to the middle in a 356. So you can't say that they're like soft and then just running it hard out the back. That thing's, I don't know that you can run a car any more aggressively than that, a suspended door slammer. So, I mean, you can't say that they're not getting after it. I mean, they're seriously getting after it. But I looked some of the difference. Aaron Wells, a regular in the Midwest Drag Racing Series, a former champion of the Midwest Drag Racing Series, a real high class. He was a world beater in the Midwest Drag Racing Series. I believe he went a career best 362. And the difference really is in that short time. He went 938 down low. So what we're going to see is some of these Midwest guys that have been a part of the series for a long time, they're going to have to get a little more aggressive down low, right? I mean, but is the track going to even allow that anywhere else in the world? Because I heard it from a multitude of people that the surface provided by Clyde Scott, Galen Smith and company at Extreme Raceway Park this past weekend was the best track they'd ever raced on in their life. So you can pretty much, it's tough because it's an anomaly, right? They're not
a lot
of
variables. We'll have to see the next race or two how it shakes out. But hey, healthy independent regional pro mod series, we're all for that here. And it was good to see those guys have a hell of an event to start the season.
I surely think so. Do you think